number 9, number 9, number 9, number 9, number 9. Number 9, number 9, number 9, number 9. Number 9, number 9, number 9, number number 9, 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 number 9.
Welcome back to the White Album in Depth. This is episode 29 of Revolution 9. Right, here we go then, folks. The one I've been dreading the most. If you ask most Beatles fans out there what the worst Beatles song is, what their least favourite Beatles song is, I can guarantee you the vast amount of them are going to say Revolution 9. I would say Revolution 9 as well. Now, in its defence, there will be people out there who will say this isn't a song as such. It's not a pop song and it's not supposed to be. It's art. It's an avant-garde piece of art, and I'm going to be honest, I'm not the most avant-garde-y person out there. It's not really my scene, so as an avant-garde piece, it's perhaps quite a good piece. It's not something I'm into, but if you're into your avant-garde, you'll probably like this. It's probably one of the better examples of avant-garde music. But anyway, this came out at the peak of John Lennon's avant-garde period. It was when it was all starting. Of course, around this period, it is the album with Yoko, Two Virgins, which is of course an album more famous for its cover than anything on it. It's an absolutely appalling album. But the cover itself, yeah, if you've ever wanted to see John and Yoko with no clothes on, there it is. Obviously I can't include it in here, picture of it on here, because YouTube will not allow nudity, because who wants to see that? I certainly don't. I wish I hadn't seen it. It scars you. They would also in 1969 do two further albums, Life with the Lions and The Wedding Album, also equally crap. But this was the only time they did avant-garde sort of music with the Beatles, and I don't really know how he got away with it, but we're going to look into it today. We're going to go deeper into Revolution number 9. Right then, let's begin this tale. It starts on May 30th, 1968 at Abbey Road, or EMI Studios as it was known then. Now this session was the very first session the Beatles did for the White Album, and they were working on Revolution 1. Now if you want to know more about Revolution 1, go and watch my video on Revolution 1. Anyway, they would use take 18 as the basis of the master take to then begin applying overdubs to. But take 18 was actually a 10-minute take, but they'd only used the first 4 minutes for Revolution 1. But the remaining 6 minutes, well, that would serve as the basis for Revolution 9. So this 6 minutes is mainly just the Beatles jamming, it's just the messing about, but John and Yoko would begin to assemble a number of sound effects and tape loops to then begin applying to it. So the first session for Revolution 9 would take place on June 6th, 1968. This was the first session where it was seen as its own entity, as its own thing. Obviously for the first session it was Revolution 1 they were working on, but this time John at least was seeing it as its own thing. So during this session, John would compile 12 effects tapes. Now not all of these effects tapes were actually destined for Revolution 9, some of them were destined for an upcoming stage production of John's book in his own right. So the next session would take place on June 10th, 1968, and John would spend 3 hours in this session compiling even more sound effects. And then on June 11th, 1968, whilst Paul McCartney was in Studio 2 of Abbey Road recording Blackbird, John would enter Studio 3 where he would compile even more sound effects tapes. He hasn't half been a busy man with his sound effects here. So the most significant session for Revolution 9 would take place on June 20th, 1968. Now for this session, only 2 of the Beatles were present, John Lennon and George Harrison, although George Martin and Yoko Ono were also present and they would play quite a big role in this as well. Now Paul McCartney had just flown off to America for a 5-day holiday and Ringo was also away, so yeah, Paul and Ringo managed to get themselves out of being involved in this, they're lucky devils. Now for this session, John had actually taken over Studios 1, 2 and 3 at Abbey Road, and he would have the staff and engineers of Abbey Road running between each of these studios to work the tape loop machines, the effects and all of that. There was a lot going on. So to begin with, they would use the last 6 minutes of take 18 of Revolution 1 as their starting point. This was the basis for Revolution 9. This was where they would start applying some of John and Yoko's sound effects and tape loops that they'd been creating the last few weeks. to this take, and they wouldn't use all 6 minutes of Revolution 1, the last 6 minutes I should say. They would just use bits of it, portions of it. They would chop and change it around a bit as well, but that was the basis, that was what they would start adding everything to. So in total they would apply 45 tape loops and sound effects to this recording. These of course were what John and Yoko have been creating over the last few weeks. 45 of them. Think of all the great music that John could have been doing in that time instead, rather than fannying on with this. So John and George would also record themselves just saying a load of random phrases, and this would be applied to the track. And Yoko would also get involved. She would record herself making a high-pitched noise. God knows what that noise is supposed to be. And she would also include extracts of her audio diary in the recording. Now, of course, of all these tape loops, sound effects, etc. that got applied to Revolution 9, the most famous by a mile is this unknown voice that just keeps saying number 9, number 9, number 9 on repeat. That's all this song is really famous for. So yeah, that was the most famous one. This was basically it for this session. They just kept putting sound effects and stuff on. So yeah, that was it really. That was all they did this day. So the final session for Revolution 9 would take place the following day, June 21st, 1968. Now this was where the final few sound effects were applied to the track, including the football chant, "Block that kick." So yeah, that was it. Revolution 9 was now complete and ready to go, unfortunately. So after the song was completed, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr and George Martin would all try their very, very best to persuade John to leave this off the White Album, to not include it, but unfortunately they failed and John got his way and it ended up on the White Album. Now Paul himself had had a long interest in avant-garde music. He'd actually been involved in it for a few years. He'd been involved in it long before John had been involved. John only really got involved because of Yoko. But Paul had done a number of recordings himself like this avant-garde sort of thing, but he'd never released any of them. Now the most famous one of note is the infamous Carnival of Light that was recorded during the Sgt. Pepper sessions. To this day, this remains unreleased, thankfully, although there are people out there that seem destined to hear Revolution 9, Carnival of Light, but apparently for people who have heard it, it makes Revolution 9 sound like I Want to Hold Your Hand and stuff like that. So I'm in no hurry to hear Carnival of Light. I couldn't care less about it, but that's Paul's version of Revolution 9. But anyway, Paul did not think that this was a good idea, releasing Revolution 9. He thought it would damage the Beatles brand, if that makes sense. It would damage their public image, the perception that the public has of them. And was he right? Well, arguably in some ways he was, in other ways he wasn't. I don't think this song would damage the Beatles' public brand, their public image as such. It would probably do more damage to John's public image than the rest of them. But yeah, I just wish they'd succeeded in getting this song left off, because just think, this, you know, all the stuff they could have included in the place of this. It's a shame, innit? Now John himself would even admit that most people didn't dig Revolution 9, so yeah, at least he wasn't completely naive. The White Album was released on the 22nd of November 1968, and Revolution 9 would be the 5th track on side 4 of the album. It was also the 29th track overall on the White Album. It's also the longest track on the White Album, and by far it is the most divisive. Well, if you can even call it divisive, I think it's a common belief that this is the worst track on the album. This is, you know, been dividing people since it came out, with more people, I would say, probably not liking this than liking it. But if you do like it, good for you. I don't know how you managed to do that, but there we go. So John would later say what he was trying to do with this song was paint a picture using sound of a revolution. So yeah, I'll leave that up to you to decide whether he succeeded at that or not. Anyway, this song would also play a part in both the Paul is Dead conspiracy and the Charles Manson thing, so we'll take a little deeper dive into both those things now, into how this played a part in those. So firstly, the Paul is Dead conspiracy. This obviously kicked off in 1969 with some Americans who had too much time on their hand. But what happened was they played this song backwards, and the bit of the song that says number 9, they claim that when you play this backwards, what it's actually saying there is "Turn me on, dead man." Yeah, I love that phrase though, "Turn me on, dead man." I'd call an album that. I think that'd be a great band name as well, "Turn me on, dead man." Anyway, they also, during this song, John included the sound effect of a car crash and an explosion. Now obviously the conspiracy is that Paul was killed in a car crash. So yeah, a lot of people thought, well, I say a lot of people, the morons that believe this conspiracy thought that this was John hinting at that. Yeah, obviously John denied all this, but turn me on, dead man. So Charles Manson would also reference Revolution 9 when he was coming up with all of this bizarre beliefs that he had. So what he believed basically was that all black people were going to rise up and kill all white people, but Manson and his family of followers, they would be spared because he had found all these hidden meanings about it in the White Album and the Book of Revelations. So with regard to Revolution 9, at one point in the song, John Lennon shouts "right," but Manson misheard this and he thought that Lennon was shouting "rise." So this was him telling Manson and his followers to rise up, to kill these black people before they can rise up and kill all the white people. So he would also interpret Revolution 9 as being a parallel for Chapter 9 of the Book of Revelations. Now apparently when Manson was coming up with all these bizarre ideas, the song on the White Album that he referenced the most was Revolution 9. So yeah, well done John, your avant-garde art here was influencing a psychopath, but to be fair, anyone who listens to this song on repeat too much will probably be driven insane. Now Manson also believed that the Beatles were the 4 locusts that were mentioned in Revelation 9. So basically he thought that Beetle was a parallel for locusts, so yeah. He really was a lunatic, wasn't he? Anyway, basically what would happen was he would instruct his followers, his family of lunatics, to go and commit a series of murders in August 1969. And the uprising, well, it never came, and all that happened was they all ended up locked up in prison, so yeah, that was Charles Manson. That's just a very brief thing. If you want to know the full thing, there'll be videos, books, etc. out there all about it, but I don't want to spend too much time talking about him, to be honest. Right then, Revolution 9. I've not really got all that much to say here because, in case you haven't picked up by now, I don't like this song, if you can call it a song. Yeah, I don't listen to it, basically. If you watch my last video on Cry Baby Cry, I said in that video that as far as I'm concerned, that is the closing track of the White Album, so after Cry Baby Cry finishes, that's it, the album goes off, so I don't listen to this or the song that comes after it, although the song that comes after it at least is listenable. I just don't think it's worth sitting through Revolution 9 for the song that comes after this. So yeah, basically I don't like this song. Now I'll openly admit that I'm not into avant-garde, so I'm probably not the target audience for John and Yoko's avant-garde pieces of music, pieces of art. But if I'm going to play devil's advocate, I suppose this song, it does add to the charm of the White Album. It's another variety, another genre. It's the avant-garde genre, which, yeah, I suppose some people will be into that. Some people out there will like this, I don't know how, but there will be people out there that like this, and you know, as an avant-garde piece, this is probably a very good avant-garde piece. It's just I don't like avant-garde stuff, so I'm of the George Harrison opinion of it being haven't got a clue. So yeah. Now it is a bit of an ugly duckling on the White Album. I know I've spoken about the variety, the randomness, the way that there's all these different genres, but I think despite this, a lot of the songs on the White Album, the DNA is still the same. So, you know, a song like Obla Di Obla Da and I'm So Tired are very different. Martha My Dear and Julia are very different. Your Blues and Rocky Raccoon are 2 very different songs. But the DNA is still the same. They still feel like Beatles songs. And Revolution 9 doesn't really feel like that. It feels like a John and Yoko piece. It doesn't feel Beatlesy. Yeah, it is an ugly duckling. So, yeah. Basically, I'll conclude here, I don't like it. It's taking up space. You know, in my opinion, this is what, I don't know how long it is. It's like 8 minutes, I think. I think it's 8 minutes, 7-8 minutes long. That's quite a lot of space to take up on vinyl. They could have got another 2 or 3 songs in this space. It's not like they were shorter songs either. John, Paul, George, they still had a backlog of songs that could have gone on the White Album. We'll look at some of the Isha demos in the episode after the next one that didn't make the White Album. I'm excited to do that one. But yeah, any of them could have gone in place of this, and I think most people would have preferred that. But there we go, Revolution 9, I don't like it. So that concludes another episode of the White Album in depth. I can breathe now we've got that song out the way. Whew. Anyway, if you're not subscribed to my channel and you've enjoyed this video, well, please do consider subscribing. It would mean a lot. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. If you've not seen any previous episodes in this series, there is a playlist on my channel that consists of all previous episodes, and the very, 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 very few future episodes will also be added to that playlist. Anyway, join me next time when Ringo will be putting us all to sleep with a lullaby. Till then though, do take care. Number 9, number 9, number 9, number 9. Turn me on, dead man. Ooh, ow.